Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Qnews Economic Bulletin. I'm Henny Saif, and we'll be bringing you the latest top economic stories along with the expert analysis on the events and trends shaping the regional and global economy. Throughout our coverage this evening, we spotlight key sectors and highlight the defining economic developments of the moment. But we'll start with the latest headlines, and I'll hand you over to Salma Al-Fi'i for our top economic stories. Salma, what do you have for us?
Thank you, Haney. And we have plenty of news and developments from around the world. We start off with the latest update of the hour as Britain's new Prime Minister Andy Burnham has pledged to introduce measures this week to help ease the cost of living crisis, promising Britons some breathing space now while outlining how the plans will be funded. He said a broader 10-year national plan would be unveiled later this year. Burnham has also vowed to boost youth employment, reform education, expand mental health support, build more council homes, and invest in preventative public services.
The seventh Prime Minister since 2016, making this a moment for reflection.
Following the appointment of Andy Burnham as Prime Minister, Rachel Reeves resigned as Britain's Finance Minister. In a statement, Reeves thanked colleagues and expressed support for Burnham's new government, saying she remained committed to helping Labour deliver its agenda. Her departure comes as Burnham begins reshaping his cabinet after succeeding Keir Starmer as Prime Minister. In Asia, Beijing's economy grew 5.4% year-on-year in the first half of 2026 to 2.64 trillion yuan, or about $388.7 billion, driven by steady growth in key sectors. The services sector, the city's largest economic driver, expanded at 6.1%, while the primary and secondary industries grew at 3.9% and 0.9% respectively. Officials said employment and consumer prices remained stable during the period, with residents' incomes continuing to rise steadily. The National Bureau of Statistics has reported that China's surveyed urban unemployment rate for young people fell to its lowest level in a year in June, and the jobless rate for people aged 16 to 24, excluding students, declined to a 14.9% from 15.6% in May. Unemployment among those aged 25 to 29 edged down to a 7.1%, while the rate for people aged 30 to 59 eased to a 4.0%. The Ministry of Industry and Information Technology, MIIT, has announced that China's industrial sector remained a key driver of economic growth in the first half of 2026, contributing more than 35% of the country's overall growth. MIIT Chief Engineer Wang Weiming said the economy remained stable as government policies boosted consumption, accelerated equipment upgrades, and supported key industries. Industrial output from major enterprises grew at 5.4% year-on-year in the first half, while profits rose to an 18.8% in the first 5 months. Goods exports increased at 13.4% in yuan terms, and the digital sector maintained strong momentum, with revenue up to 13% to a 16.7 trillion yuan and profits rising at 19.3%. And moving on to the MENA region, Morocco's High Commission for Planning has expected the economic growth is expected to slow to 3% in 2027 from a projected 4.8% in 2026, as agricultural output returns to normal following this year's strong harvest. The Commission said the outlook assumes average cereal production after heavy rainfall boosted the farm sector this year. It's forecasting the current account deficit to widen to a 3.9% of GDP in 2026 before easing to a 3.6% in 2027, citing weaker external demand amid slowing global trade. The fiscal deficit is expected to narrow to a 3.2% of the GDP in 2027 from a 3.4% in 2026, while public debt is projected to edge down to a 76.1% of the GDP from 76.5%. Jordan and Spain have signed a €765,000 financing agreement to support the digital transformation of Jordan's water sector. And the project will assess water systems, develop a digital transformation roadmap, and introduce smart solutions to improve operations, monitoring, energy management, and cybersecurity. Water Minister Raed Abu Saud said the initiative will help reduce water losses, improve efficiency, and strengthen national water security. Spanish Ambassador José Luis Pardo Cuerdo said the agreement reflects strong cooperation and Spain's support for modernizing Jordan's water resource management. Iraq and Syria have signed a memorandum of understanding to rebuild a long-idled crude oil pipeline linking Iraq's Kirkuk oil fields to Syria's Mediterranean port of Banias. And Iraq's oil ministry said the project aims to diversify export routes, strengthen energy infrastructure, and improve regional energy security. The pipeline, built in 1952, has been out of service for decades. The project will be carried out by a consortium including Chevron, Transocean, and Qatar's Urbicon Trading and Contracting. In North America, a bill passed by the U.S. House of Representatives to make daylight saving time permanent is expected to face strong opposition in the Senate. Republican Senator John Kennedy said President Donald Trump recently urged him to support the measure, which would end the twice-yearly clock changes observed across most of the United States. Kennedy said he backs the bill, but warned its prospects in the Senate remain uncertain, saying it's going to be a dogfight. In commodities, the oil prices were steady on Monday, pulling back from earlier highs as price pressure from hopes of renewed U.S.-Iran negotiations was countered by Yemen's Houthis declaring a naval blockade against Saudi Arabia. Brent crude futures were down 6 cents, or around 0.1%, at the $88.04 a barrel, after hitting a $91.42 for their highest since June the 11th. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude was down an 0.2% at an $82.29 after touching its highest level since June the 12th at an $85.39. And gold held steady on Monday as investors assessed developments in the escalating U.S.-Iran conflict, which lifted energy prices and clouded the outlook for U.S. interest rates. Spot gold was down an 0.1% at a $14.39 per ounce. U.S. gold futures for August delivery were steady at a $4,019 yields on the benchmark 10-year U.S. Treasury note gained an 0.5%. The U.S. dollar was up an 0.3%. Economic signals and corporate developments. In the United States, the Dow Jones Industrial Average edged down an 0.20%, while the S&P 500 gained an 0.40%, and the Nasdaq Composite rose to an 0.82%. In Europe, the UK's FTSE 100 declined an 0.71%, while France's CAC 40 edged up in 0.02%, and Germany's DAX increased in 0.06%. In Asia, Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index jumped to 2.36%, and China's Shanghai Composite advanced in 0.85%. Japan's Nikkei 225 was closed for the Marine Day holiday. And those were the economic top stories for the hour. We now return to Hani Saif in studio. Hani.
Thank you, Selma. Ladies and gentlemen, now we go to our in-depth analysis. Artificial intelligence is transforming industries, economies, and everyday life at an unprecedented pace. But as the technology advances, so do questions about global cooperation, governance, and equal access. Those issues took center stage at the 2026 World Artificial Intelligence Conference in Shanghai. Let's take a closer look. The 2026 World Artificial Intelligence Conference and high-level meeting on global AI governance concluded in Shanghai, with intended procurement deals reaching 20.36 billion yuan, up 25% from last year. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson, advancing global AI governance and making significant progress towards establishing the World Artificial Intelligence Cooperation Organization. The conference underscored China's commitment to open and inclusive AI development. China also unveiled an action plan to strengthen international AI cooperation, with a focus on supporting developing countries and expanding AI applications in healthcare. Moreover, the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has praised China's efforts to help narrow the global AI gap, saying they position the country to work closely with the United Nations on AI governance. Guterres stressed that AI should not be treated as a privilege limited to rich countries and large enterprises.
Our main concern is to have a universal platform where everybody can be involved in the governance of AI. AI cannot be a club of a group of rich countries or a group of very powerful companies. AI is linked to the life of all of us. And China has been very supportive of that initiative. First of all, to create an independent scientific panel on AI that will be reporting in total independence, 40 people from north and south, where we agree on some guardrails that need to be respected.
And for his part, the director and representative of UNESCO's Regional Office for East Asia, Shahbaz Khan, has called for turning AI ethics into concrete action and emphasized the importance of increasing women's leadership in AI. He noted that the proposed World Artificial Intelligence Cooperation Organization could complement the UN's work by strengthening multilateral cooperation, building trust, and enhancing global AI governance capacity. And for more on this, we turn to the board member and International Association for the Management of Technology, Dr. Mohammed Azem from Cairo. Dr. Azem, welcome to Q News. AI is now the focus of major global conferences. Why are these discussions so important, and what can they achieve?
Thank you, Mr. Saif, and always a pleasure being on Q News. Actually, AI is becoming an integral part of any conference, even is not related to high tech. Actually, the conferences is usually it's a perfect platform for connecting the policymakers with the business community, with entrepreneurs, with academia to discuss the most pressing issues regarding the emerging technologies. On the top of it, of course, the artificial intelligence, because we are now witnessing or actually living in an era that AI is becoming the fundamental technology for developing or even transforming any industry, just name it, starting from the defense industry to the banking sector, to the financial services, to healthcare, to retail, to energy, just name any in the sector that actually AI is becoming the key transformation factor for reshaping and actually upgrading or leveraging such industries. So now not all the countries having the ability to build their own ecosystem or AI development ecosystem because of the cost, of course, because it needs caliber, it needs well-trained workforce, it needs a great, very advanced, up-to-date research and development institution. It needs billions of dollars in investment. And of course, on top of that, it needs computing power that is not available for every country, as well as it needs huge energy consumption, which is also sometimes it's quite a burden for most of the countries, especially in the south. So such conference and with this noble establishment of the AI cooperation organization and the global AI capacity development network, this is a good start. However,
Yes.
I believe this is it could be the beginning, but the implementation of such great initiatives is the key actually, because
We will talk
sorry.
about this, but first off, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said that AI should not be a privilege to the rich and wealthy. So how can we ensure AI does not become a technology that's only available to the wealthy countries and the large companies and multinationals?
Uh, Again, this is very noble, of course. However, if you need to have such inclusive AI ecosystem, you need to have open source ecosystem. You need to have a sort of inclusive computing power. You need to have a sort of knowledge transfer. You need to have mutual funds to develop such technology within the countries, especially in South. And this means effort, this means knowledge transfer, this means hundreds of billions of investment. So who's going to provide such amount of investment for just having countries in the south to be part of this global arena when it comes to AI? Especially, we are witnessing a great dominance from both the United States and China, and each country of them actually is investing more than 1 trillion US dollars within the coming 5 years. So this is a very debatable thing and actually is very controversial. However, no one cannot afford being out of such ecosystem, because if you don't own this technology, your technological gap will be widened every minute and even every second, and this will be reflected on your ability to have a sort of economic and social development, because you lack actually all the essences, all the basic technologies that needed to upgrade your agriculture sector, or manufacturing sector, or your service sector, or your banking sector, or healthcare sector. So this is actually this could be a good start. However, again, the implementation of such great initiative, the concept of the global organization for AI cooperation, the global organization for capacity building or capacity development within the AI arena, is very
Yes.
noble. However, again, if we don't have the resources, if we don't have secured funds mainly from the countries who's leading such initiatives like China in our case, and their willingness to have a sort of knowledge transfer, because knowledge transfer actually what makes a difference. To have the ability to train our engineers in their advanced laboratory to avail or having a sort of shared computing power to run our models on such huge computing farms. This is very sophisticated. However, this is the only way if we need, as countries in the South, to survive this very competitive
Yes.
landscape, and
Well,
that's advancing every second,
this
actually.
proposal by China to establish the World Artificial Intelligence Cooperation Organization, how could this fit into the global AI governance landscape? Now, you've mentioned the funding of it, which would be funded by mainly the main countries leading the AI industry, be it China or the US. Do you think then there would be some sort of bias for this governance? Would it have any sort of executive powers to implement and enforce the rules and regulations in different countries? Will it be under some sort of judicial jurisdiction?
Again, governance is another controversial issue, and it has been there. And actually, I've been part of so many discussions locally and internationally regarding how hard to have a governance model that we implement. Especially both leading countries, China and United States, they are not willing to govern the development of AI, because they see this could hinder their efforts to own such advanced technology or implement such advanced technology in their economic sectors. And this is the dilemma. Everyone is talking about governance. Everyone is seeking governance. We are talking here about ethical use of AI. We need to have a better access to AI in an ethical way, and having a sort of inclusive AI platform for so many countries or all countries all over the world. However, who is owning the technology is not willing to do so. And this is the real dilemma here, because actually, if you own the technology and you are not willing to govern the technology, so nobody can impose any governance model on such big countries or the leading superpowers, and of course you cannot even enforce such governance models or frameworks on the multinationals, who's becoming actually new empires. We're talking here companies that their market cap exceeding 3 and 4 billion US dollars and making revenues more than the GDP of many countries, including countries within the G7, for example. So this is the dynamics. Actually, when it comes to technology, is not that easy, especially. Actually, no one has or have the ability to own the technology will sacrifice that for the sake of governance, while the country, the policymakers, the business community, the multinationals will use this technology to have a better competitive edge over competition, and even have a sort of dominance. And we see so AI companies and the high-tech firms are now taking place in every single aspect when it comes to forming the economic and political agenda for many countries, including the United States. So this is not an easy, as it seems. It sounds very noble. However, the implementation, again, this is very challenging, and I believe unless the two superpowers are willing to have a sort of ethical framework that governing the AI development and AI implementation, I think this will be just something to discuss over panels and international conferences.
Well, we are moving from AI principles to real-world implementation and regulation. So which tools today can help make AI safer, more accountable, up to the standards of ethics and the higher morality, higher ground of morality? AI in healthcare is also advancing quickly. What safeguards are needed before these systems are widely used, respected, regulated, and abide by all codes of ethics and honor?
Actually, first of all, we need to be sure that we don't have a sort of bias by the machines or made by the machines. We need to be sure that humans have the final word and that in control of machines. The final decision should be actually done by humans for holding them accountable, not the machines. And this one of the things, actually, one of the dilemmas that we are facing when it comes to regulating the lethal autonomous weapon systems and regulating the autonomous healthcare systems, as well as the autonomous, I would say, hiring agents or having a sort of a credit bureau within banks run by AI algorithm. So we need to be sure that we don't have so any sort of bias. We need to have to be sure that the final decision should be done by humans, not machines, as well as we need to be sure that people are dealing, they know they are dealing with machines, not humans, and of course to secure our privacy and data, which is another concern, and because actually AI is totally based on data, and data security and data privacy is becoming another concern by the public in so many countries, including the two super high-tech countries, United States and China. So, and if, of course in Europe. So, data security, data privacy, to what limit you are using my data, to what limit you are actually transferring my data from one platform to another, to run my data in autonomous way, how you can use my data to have a sort of a digital footprint of any citizen, and how you can use such a digital footprint, how what's the ability or the limitation or the preventing manipulation of such data against
Yes.
civilians. This is a lot of issues that most of the people are talking about, and still now we are just hoping for ethical frameworks to govern such a dilemma, and hopefully one day we'll be able to implement and
Yes, it's
enforce such.
definitely an issue that is visited and needs to be always continuously revisited. From Cairo, that was the board member of the International Association for the Management of Technology, Dr. Mohammed Azem. Dr. Azem, thank you very much for your insights. And the final whistle may have ended the 2026 FIFA World Cup, but the economic conversation is only beginning. Over the past 6 weeks, the tournament has generated billions of dollars in spending, attracted millions of visitors, and created opportunities across sectors ranging from tourism and hospitality to sponsorship, media and retail. But beyond the excitement, an important question remains. Did the World Cup deliver on its economic promises? Let's take a closer look. The 2026 FIFA World Cup has officially come to an end, with Spain beating Argentina 1-0 in the final to win the biggest tournament in the competition's history. Off the pitch, the expanded 48-team World Cup has also become FIFA's most commercially successful edition, with the organization expected to announce record revenues of around $15 billion, exceeding its original forecasts. Staged across 3 countries in 16 host cities, the tournament generated billions of dollars through broadcasting, sponsorships, hospitality and ticket sales. As the football ends, attention is now turning to the tournament's economic scorecard and whether it delivered on its promises for FIFA, host cities, and the global sports industry. As attention shifts from the competition to its legacy, economists and industry leaders will now assess whether the business case matched the expectations. We're joined by the sports industry analyst, Mr. Matt Powell. Mr. Powell, welcome to Q News. Hope you've enjoyed the tournament. So FIFA is expected to announce record revenues of around $15 billion from the World Cup 2026, well above its initial projections. Now, what does this tell us about the commercial success of the tournament? Is it reflected with action on the pitch? Is it the Americanization of the packaging of the whole tournament?
Well, I think I think these results are perhaps a little suspect. FIFA is a very self-serving organization, and I think their first goal is to make FIFA look good. Clearly, the stadium sold out. Hotels were hard to find in the cities where games were held. Restaurants were full. So it overall, I would say yes, it was successful. Whether that number of 15 billion is a real one or not is, in my opinion, somewhat suspect.
Mm-hmm. Well, this edition of the World Cup was the biggest in history. 48 teams and 104 matches. From a business perspective, what is your overall verdict of this tournament? 48 countries, did it guarantee more fans traveling from more countries joining in this and taking part of the tournament, or was it mainly the American audience and the American supporters?
I think given some of the immigration issues here, that probably put somewhat of a damper on people attending from certain countries. And so I think a significant portion of the attendees were Americans perhaps of descent of some of these countries. So it was a lot of fun. I think a lot of the small countries, as we talked about the last time we met, were more competitive than people who thought they were going to be. For the most part, the games were very competitive and compelling to watch. So all in, from a sports perspective, I think this was a big success. And you're right, with the additional teams, of course, this is going to be the largest World Cup ever.
Mm-hmm. Well, the FIFA expanded the tournament significantly, 48 countries. Was it justifiable? Because there was a lot of criticism regarding the pricing of the tickets. It was just way ahead and way above the average blue-collar football fan.
Yes, absolutely, and I think that did put somewhat of a damper on people's feelings about the games. Of course, not everybody went to the games. Many more people watched on various media than were actually in attendance. But yes, especially the early games, we heard stories that the prices were coming down from where they had started because the prices were too high. So they probably have learned a lesson here that there's only so much ceiling, or maybe the best way to put it is there is a ceiling on how much people are willing to pay for tickets. Again, particularly in the early matches. But again, I think the fact that 48 teams played and there were over 100 matches played, I think indicates that this is absolutely the biggest event ever.
Mm. Which sectors do you believe emerged as the biggest winners? Tourism and hospitality, the sponsors, broadcasters, local businesses. A lot of people are saying sponsors were the biggest since they actually added the 2 hydration breaks, which allowed for more commercials and advertising, plus the half an hour halftime show for the World Cup final.
Yes, I think the broadcasters, Fox really was the big winner here. They spent a tremendous amount of money, but they got an amazing amount of exposure. There were here in the States, there were 2 and 3 hour pre-game broadcasts about the game itself, which got good ratings. I think again the hotels were sold out in all of the venue cities for the most part. And I live in the northeast of the states, and the matches in Boston were very well attended, and the bars were full of people celebrating. So from an economic point of view, it clearly was a lift across the board. But I would say if you're looking for who's the big winner here, it's probably the broadcasters.
Well, 16 host cities, and host cities promoted the World Cup as a catalyst for long-term economic growth. Now, based on what you've seen so far, do you think those expectations were realistic? I'm not just talking about the US, I'm also talking about Mexico and Canada.
Yeah, I think it's too early to tell. Did people feel good about being in Mexico City, and did they have a good experience as a tourist there? And do they say to their friends, "Oh, you need to go there because we had such a great time"? I think it remains to be seen whether that happens. This was an opportunity for a catalyst like that, but there's no guarantee that suddenly we're going to see tourism go way up again. Particularly here in the States, the immigration issues that we're facing, I think, will put somewhat of a damper on tourism from outside the U.S.
One of the themes throughout this tournament was FIFA's effort to monetize every aspect of the event, from premium hospitality to selling authenticated pieces of the final match, the final match pitch, the World Cup winners' rings, the Tom Cruise speech at the end. Is this simply smart business, or are we seeing sports organizations pushing commercialization and capitalism too far?
I think we're reaching the outer reaches of too far. I think it's great that fans are engaged and wanted to know about it, but there was a feeling that FIFA was in this for one reason and one reason only, and that was money. And that's not a good look, I think, when you're trying to win over a new group of fans who perhaps aren't as focused on this sport as they are in other American sports.
Well, we've seen also digital platforms, the creators and fan-generated content play a much larger role than in previous tournaments. I mean, we've seen the broadcasters take part of social media and digital content, but how has that changed the commercial landscape now of global sporting events?
Well, I would tell you that digital is the primary way to reach an American fan. And so all of the ways that you can talk to the fan and engage with the fan need to be used, and the most effective way of doing that is through digital. So you just see hundreds of podcasters and creators, as you call them, and running into social media to try to capture the fan. I think that will continue. That has been the primary way for brands to talk to consumers, and I don't see that changing at all.
Okay, one final question, Mr. Powell. Looking beyond that final, what do you think will be remembered as the biggest legacy of the 2026 FIFA World Cup? Was it the great football? Was it the sensational, the Hollywood and American extravaganza of the whole show? Do you think the US tried a bit too hard? What do you think of it?
Yeah, I think people are going to really remember the experience in general. I don't know that there's one thing that they're going to take away. People who really understand the game of soccer or football, as it's not called here, probably learned a lot and saw a lot. I think several segments of the population were introduced to the sport in a way that they had not been before. So I think it's the total experience, and that experience is really down to an individual. So
do you think this experiment was a successful experiment?
I do. I'm not sure it brought all of the economic goals that people were expecting. But overall, yes, I would say it's been a quality experience.
The sports industry analyst, Mr. Matt Powell. Mr. Powell, thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your insights.
Thanks for having me.
And that brings us to the end of our economic bulletin for today and our final FIFA World Cup 2026 economic review. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to Q News for the latest updates from the worlds of business, finance and global affairs and maybe the next World Cup. I'm Hani Saif. Thank you for joining us.